The idea of saving the planet alone is not enough to inspire companies to adopt greener practices. What revenue opportunities can green IT offer?
I think from a revenue perspective, it's actually increasing to the bottom line. So as we look at the fact that we're going to see 18% power growth year on year, if we were maintaining the current trend, then the idea is we want to obviously reduce that power consumption or reduce the cost of the power that's going to increase. So if we can start to look at that by better utilisation of other devices, then that starts to affect the bottom line of the organisation overall. So it's not necessarily are we seeing a direct correlation between a cost saving, but we're cost managing so that as the increase power consumption occurs, we're minimising we're maximising the efficiencies overall within the data centre.
How do companies identify and measure benefits of a green data centre?
There's a lot of development of tools at this point in time. So as far as measuring the benefits of a green data centre, we're probably at the cusp of the green grid or looking at how does a data centre become green. And so there's all these new technologies that we just talked about from all the major leading vendors that are coming into play. At the same time, we're starting to see governments start to talk about carbon footprint and carbon trading, and that affecting businesses overall. So I think as tools develop and as management tools develop to actually manage devices in the network, and again, this is where Raritan plays a part, both with our KVM solution as well as with our PDU solution. The idea is to actually start to manage effectively each of the devices. And so by managing the devices, knowing the power consumption of each of those devices, knowing the load bearing on those devices, knowing the applications that are occurring in each of those devices, then we can start to make decisions based on thresholds and start to affect power reductions and therefore bringing power savings into the story. So we actually move to what is known as brilliant power, where in a dynamic environment with management tools, we have a tool called Power IQ. It starts to actually look at the data center, all the applications in a data center, and starts to dynamically configure those on the run so that as thresholds are met, then something else will come into play to reduce those thresholds and at the same time create a load balance and reduce overall cost.
So how much would it roughly cost to transform an existing data center to a green data center?
If we look at a data center, you could say that in a data center, IT spend accounts for about 50%, 30% is on cooling, and then the other 20% is on lighting, power, and other general activities within a data center. So if we can save on their cooling significantly by cooling specifically into the hotspot by redesign, if we can then, as we're upgrading our equipment, which is an ongoing process, that all brings down the overall cost within the data center. So as far as the overall cost to employ a new data center, I think it's an ongoing activity. So there's no actual one device that's going to cost X, this is going to cost Y. As a culmination, it's something that as equipment is replaced and new equipment is brought into the data center, then that's replaced with green equipment or equipment that is energy efficient.
You mentioned major leading vendors, offering similar products for data centers. Can you just name some of these vendors?
I think what we'd be looking at, well, obviously Raritan is very focused on the access, the monitoring and the control, both through the KVM, through our management solutions and through the intelligent PDU. That's where Raritan is focused on in the market. When we talk about what are other vendors doing, we would talk about vendors such as cooling vendors, as an example. So I won't name any specifics, but we would talk about people that are providing the infrastructure as far as UPS systems are concerned, cooling systems, racks, and the rack technology. So that would be all on the facility side. On the IT side, it would be very much your traditional chip manufacturers, so the very large manufacturers who are providing chips. It would be your server manufacturers, those organisations that are very much into providing servers, and there are a couple of major organisations globally that all have a green statement as far as what they're doing in their servers to reduce power consumption. We also then look at the communications and network vendors. So all of these, many of these leading vendors are actually part of what's known as the Green IT Grid, which is actually looking at overall reduction or efficiencies of green IT within a data centre.
So you're offering this Dominion?
Dominion PX, that's correct, yes.
In Asia?
We're offering it globally, and yes, definitely offering it in Asia. So it's a product that we recently launched back in April of this year, a global launch. And basically what it enables is that it enables what's known as socket level metering. So from an IP console, such as a web browser, you can actually start to manage your servers or any device that's actually connected to this power socket. And you can turn it on and off, so it has switching capabilities. It has throughput monitoring, so you know exactly the power consumption of a particular device. It's run through 256-bit encryption, so it's very secure in an IT environment. And so basically what we're getting to is the stage with the product that we're providing is a pure lights-out data centre. And so, as you know, in many situations, the data centre is protecting a lot of data, secure data. And if you think of a bank or a finance business, there's a lot of secure data, and access to this equipment is highly regarded. So in that situation, we can actually have a pure lights out where you don't need anybody going into the data centre. You can manage that remotely, and therefore the changes that you're affecting can be done sitting back in a console. So you don't actually need anybody touching the rack or touching a server, which obviously could affect the network operation. So all these devices are really creating an environment that is helping the IT manager to manage effectively the data center. It also, if we look at data centers overall, we're starting to see a consolidation of data centers as well, in the sense that by remotely monitoring and controlling each of the devices in the data center, we can then consolidate data centers to central locations. And because at the end of the day, resources in remote locations are very hard to come by. So if we can bring all of those into a centralised area and then manage those with centralised resources, we then create efficiencies in management as well, in utilisation of the data centre and in deployment of services.
Can you tell us the price range of this product?
The product varies in price range from around about $700 US up, depending on the configuration. So whether it's an 8-socket PDU or moving up to 32-socket PDU.
An estimate of how much companies could save by investing in this product?
I think what we're seeing is if we look at the overall consumption of a device, then they could start to, say, utilise the device by turning off certain servers that aren't effective. So let's say mail servers as an example. You might tend to find that mail servers are actually not used at all in the evening. So you could turn your mail server off, and therefore you're saving power in a 12-hour period between the time that people leave to the time that people go back into the office. Now, there may be situations, obviously, where that doesn't happen because you have remote workers, but that's one solution. You may then do your backup in the evenings where your power cost on a grid is actually lower than what it would be during the day because of consumption of power. And so therefore you would save because you're doing your backups during the evening, and therefore cost of power is cheaper at that point in time. And so you could turn that server off during the day because it's actually not needed. So there's different times when you could actually use different applications, and therefore you're getting the power savings by not having them on all the time and only turning them on when they're actually going to be utilised. And you can do that remotely.
Thank you, Chris. course.
Rashida, thank you very much for your time.